Recently, the U.S. Department of Labor released its final rule updating the Fair Labor Standards Act overtime pay requirements. Now, this rule increases the minimum salary threshold to $43,888 on July 1st of 2024, and then to $58,656 on January 1st, 2025. And today I'm pleased to welcome Scott Tackett, a business development advisor with Violan Management Associates. Scott's expertise and why I asked him to be on this program today is he is all about the human resources department, the HR department. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you. And it's we got together kind of quick on this because Scott mentioned to me just a week or two ago that this is coming up soon. And as I mentioned, July 1st is a deadline of this. But Scott, we need some of your professional deciphering abilities. What does
Sure.
this new rule mean? Tell us about it.
Okay, Jeff. Well, as you've indicated, the new rule is coming about in July 1, raising the minimum level for each classification. And we refer to this in our role, refer to as the EAP. It's executive, administrative, and professional employees. That's what kind of the terminology is used with Fair Labor Standards Act. And basically, it is the attempt here is that the U.S. Department of Labor, under Fair Labor Standards Act, has put in these new higher regulations to kind of, for lack of a better phrase, acknowledge and reward people for hours that are worked. And so they're increasing that minimum level, and also kind of one of the other let's say anticipated results may be that some people won't fall into that category. So what will happen is if they don't have that minimum of, and I think it's $844 per week, and then in January 1, it goes up to $1,128 per week. So I think what the anticipated result may be is that some people will not fall into that classification. And so therefore now they will become eligible for overtime. So it's kind of a mixed bag here. Generally, what's happened is over the years, this and Fair Labor Standards Act came about 1938. So between the years of 1938 and 1975, there was always some increases. Well, that's kind of over the years dwindled and dwindled, and finally someone woke up and said, "Hey, you know what? We better take a look at this." And been going through the process of listening across the country. I think there was 30 sessions all across the country over the last year and a half till the final rule has been issued. So that's kind of where it comes, and it's pretty staggering, pretty significant increase.
Yeah, I can see that. I imagine those who are earning under what, $43,888 are kind of happy about this because they work
Yeah,
overtime.
right.
And what are you hearing from both sides of this? It can't be all good news or good
No,
feelings.
yeah, it isn't. As Jeff, as you and I talk a lot, and when these rulings come down, there's a lot of pros and cons
Mhm.
on both sides. From the employee perspective, well, basically it's pretty cut and dry. There's an increased earnings for the workers. Many employees who previously did not qualify for overtime pay will now may be eligible if their rate isn't broadening up. So again, it's leading to higher earnings for those who will work more than 40 hours. There's also a sense from the Labor Department that on the pro side that it will improve that work-life balance. Employers may limit the amount of overtime to avoid this additional cost, which makes sense, okay? Which could lead to, from the employee's perspective, a better work-life balance as they would work fewer hours. There's also the potential for some economic stimulus. Higher pay for workers can lead to increased consumer spending and boosting our economy. Also, there's the concept from a pro perspective that says that this is fair compensation. Employees are being fairly compensated for those extra hours that they work, which would then eliminate the disparity issue. And also, there's some sentiment that this would help not only improve work-life balance, but also reduce employee burnout, which is a problem. It is a problem, particularly, now that we see so many folks working from home, and the tendency that I've seen over the last year or so, or a couple of years, is that there is a very, very strong, um, I guess, uh, habit that becomes that people that work from home, hey, it's 7 o'clock at night. I walk by my office. I can do another email. I can send out. I can make one more call. So we have to watch it. And with the stricter overtime rules, employees may be facing less pressure to work longer hours and reducing burnout. Let's talk about the con side. We know what it's going to mean for businesses: increased costs. Employers are going to face higher labor costs due to the need to pay the overtime or hire additional staff to avoid overtime, which could be particularly challenging for a lot of folks in our industry. There might be some job cuts. Let's face it. There might be some businesses that look at this and to offset the increased cost. Some businesses might be planning on reducing their workforce, cutting their hours, or even limiting hiring, which could lead to, as we know, job losses. Sometimes there's a consideration that I'm hearing folks talk about that would put it in a situation of that might reduce flexibility, might become less flexible employers with scheduling, limiting the opportunity for employees to earn overtime, and affecting those who rely on overtime for additional income. There's going to be an increased administrative burden right off the bat. Companies will need to invest more in tracking hours, compliance issues, and we know that whatever that happens, we've got to have people behind the scenes that are monitoring that. I think price increases. We have to look at that. Businesses are going to have to pass on the increased labor costs, and we may end up raising prices for our services that we provide, which would then turn around and contribute to um, uh, higher costs and inflation.
So, Scott, let's say that I have an employee who's making 42.5 and I raise them $1,000 and I get past that little limit there. That doesn't sound ethical, does it?
I think there's a struggle with that,
Yeah.
Jeff. Yeah, there's a struggle with that, and I think
Then I
that's
avoid the overtime fees
there,
or
there, there,
this
there,
rule.
there you go. Yeah, and because then you would meet the minimum requirements. So therefore, hey, I've done what I've done under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So that, and I know that I'm having some conversations about that very issue with some of my clients, and
Yeah.
asking for advice and guidance on that. So you nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah. Everyone has to run their business their way, but I could see that being a little murky issue. But so we're talking about right now, July 1st, but in July or January 1st of 25, it goes up to 58,000.
Yeah.
We're going to have this conversation again,
Yeah.
or
Yes. Yeah. We need to be thinking proactively right now about what that impact is, because
Hmm.
this is, as you said, July 1, but January 1, 2025, it's going up much more significantly. So we
Yeah.
have some issues here. There's some issues. And I think, Jeff, one of the things also that I would caution employers about, we haven't talked about this issue yet, but the actual classifications of uh, where they have their people classified. I think what we're going to see is that there will be some decisions to put people into some of these classifications that maybe they don't belong in those
Hmm.
classifications. So I think one of the results could be an increase in disputes, legal challenges regarding the classification of employees, and determine who's eligible for overtime and who isn't. And although we've talked about the categories of professional, administrative, executive, also the highly compensated portion of the of the law is going to be increased also. So we have that also is a pretty significant increase. So there's a lot of factors to be thinking about in a very short period of time.
Yes. So what about companies that may not get on board or fail to comply with this? Are there penalties? Jail time? I don't know.
There
Probably not jail
there
time.
will be there will be there the potential is very, very significant, Jeff. If they are presented with a government audit, if someone makes a claim
Hmm.
with the Department of Labor and says, "Hey, I'm not being paid according to the new law," to sit here today, I can't tell you an exact dollar figure. I just know that the potential is very, very significant for misclassification and very, very significant for not abiding by the law. So my advice is, whatever decisions you make, please make sure that it's in the framework of the law and the new regulations. And if there's any concern, I strongly urge them to seek legal advice from an employment law counselor who would understand specifically. But yes, there are definite potential for very significant penalties that could come to play. So this is a serious situation.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want a Department of Labor officials knocking on my door asking questions. So
No,
staying ahead of
if
this is smart.
yeah, it is smart, because if anyone's ever gone through a DOL audit, payroll audit, it is not fun, and it is exhausting, and it is time consuming, and a lot of resources are put forth, and you're going to be faced with a very, very significant amount of work to prove or to defend yourself. So I don't encourage anyone to have to go through that at all.
Agreed. Well, folks, everyone's now up to date on what this means for their businesses and companies. And Scott, thank you for sharing your expertise. And now we'll see what happens.
Yep. Yep. Good luck to everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, Jeff. And thank you for being at the forefront, because I think a lot of folks are going to be surprised by this one.